You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, and welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined as always by your co-host, Kevin. Kevin, how are we doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Finally back in the home state after a work trip back east that messed up my time clock, to say the least. But I'm good, man. I enjoyed the crap out of the Thursday night game. I thought it was a really good game between the Commanders and Eagles. So that was good to see a really good competitive Thursday night game, at least until the last 8 minutes of that game, when the Eagles finally took it over. But that's good. Super excited about a trade I pulled off in the home league this week. Try and get myself positioned for the home stretch and try and keep up with some of the other heavy hitters in our league here. And now, just pushing on trade deadlines, seeing what I can do here, there, and whatever, and getting ready for week 11, man. How you doing?
Oh, we're doing all right. It was kind of interesting, right? Because we did the Wednesday show, right? And one of the I immediately started launching into my, I joined as always by your co-host, and I started saying Kevin on that one, and then went, oh, and Alex. It was pretty good. It was definitely a little bit of a faux pas. I got into my natural kind of rhythm with it, and one of those that just kind of popped out and went, well. Kevin's not with us tonight. We'll see him on the Friday show. He's got the
Yeah,
JLB
yes,
thing
sir.
going.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
But it was pretty good. It was pretty interesting.
Right
So
on.
one of those kind of force a habit type of things, I guess.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, but no, it was fun, and we had a little chuckle about that to start the show off. So, but yeah, no, it was good, right? I was a little jealous about the trade that you pulled off in the home league, right? Like, I didn't really think that Nico would have been on the block, and had he been, I would have pursued that one. Actually pursued that one a little bit. So, kudos to you on pulling that one off. So it'll be interesting, right? Like how some of these things kind of really come down the stretch here.
Yeah, it definitely will. And I even see to look if he started all four of those guys.
No, no, he did not. At least last
Nope.
time I looked.
How could you not? There's JMO, traded that one. Tillman. He's gonna need a tight end because Kincaid's out. There's ETN. Oh no, he still has he has another tight end. I think he's gonna end up doing it though.
Yeah.
Because with Kincaid being out, he's gonna flip ETN into or Njoku into his tight end spot.
Right.
And that's gonna force him to play
Cooper Rush or
so yeah, he's gonna play all four of those guys. So for 1 week, it looks like it did him a service.
Yep, there you go.
I don't know. For those of you wondering what the hell went on, one of the guys in our league who has been beat up by injury this year, as many of us have been, right? Like he's definitely not the first one to get beat up by injury, but he has been deprived of quarterback, if you will. Trevor Lawrence, who may not play again the rest of the season because of the AC joint. He had Baker Mayfield on a bye, and we play in a super flex league. So he had no quarterback for this week. So I offered him Jameis Winston and Cooper Rush, along with Travis Etienne and Cedric Tillman, excuse me, for Josh Jacobs and Nico Collins. And I'll be darned, he accepted it. I didn't even get a counter. And with that, it opened up the bench spots. So then I picked up Richardson just in case he finally puts his poop in a group, or if one of my quarterbacks goes down, I at least have some sort of option. So I still have 3 quarterbacks on my roster because Richardson was left out there, and I thought for sure someone was going to try and snag him on waivers. But hell, I guess I overpaid. I mean, but it is what it is. So yeah, I was able to pull that one off. I needed a more consistent number 2 running back. ETN obviously was not fitting the bill there. and then another solid wide receiver. Why the heck not? And kind of shot for the gusto for a guy that was so desperate for quarterback play that, tossed it out there. He'd been dealing with Nico's entire injury, and probably just needed some guys to start. And so I took the player coming off of injury and fixed his quarterback problem, and then got the running back too to kind of put the icing on the cake there. So it was fortunate, right? I caught him at the right time.
Fair enough. So it'll be interesting, right? Like, I'm gonna see if we can get some other things to get a little more firepower heading down the stretch here. So, but yeah, no, I like the move. It was definitely a good one there. So the you mentioned the Commanders and the Eagles game last night. For those of us that started Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, which had been a pretty productive stack most of the season, certainly did not do us any favors on that one. So,
At least he got the touchdown at the end to help save the day. Now,
right,
in our home league, it didn't do as much, right? The touchdowns don't necessarily mean as much for the quarterback as some of the other stat compiling does.
right,
So, yes, it didn't help you in the home league necessarily, but that touchdown did help me in a couple other leagues where it's more of a standardized scoring, where I did have Jaden Daniels go. I was like, thank goodness for the touchdown. It took some of the sting out of it.
right. So, yeah, well, I'm gonna have to get creative, I think, with my lineup here a little bit to trying to overcome McLaurin's uh debacle there last night. So that's all right. We'll hit the old drawing board there and see what we can come up with. But any other kind of thoughts we want to hit up, we want to touch on before we start getting into a couple of questions?
Isn't too crazy? I mean, I feel like we got some good matchups this week. Some that are maybe not necessarily as on paper enticing, but still have implications with playoffs and shakeups and how teams are positioning some themselves down the stretch. So, I mean, I'm definitely interested for some of these games to see how teams react. I think there's a lot of good matchups out there for our star fantasy players. So that helps create points because last week as a whole scoring was down for the week. It just wasn't a great week for fantasy scoring. A lot of tough matchups. This week the matchups are a little bit more favorable, so I do think that it could lend some good favor to us as we try and bounce back.
Right. Absolutely. So yeah, no, it'll be fun. It'll be good. And let's go ahead and hit up some of these questions in the comments here. So Terrence over on YouTube saying that they are nervous about Burrow this week. Opponent had the Eagles defense, special team, Hurts, and Barkley perform last night. Is Purdy the safest option this week because of the matchup?
I'd tell you he's the safer option, but I don't know that he's the right option. Like going up against Barkley, Hurts had a solid game, not a great game, but a solid game. Eagles defense obviously did some damage. Like you're chasing some points with Barkley, right? The 2 touchdowns, the long ones, going up against the bonus points. I mean, you're chasing a few points right now. And I think that yeah, I think Burrow's matchup against Tennessee, as difficult as that is,
He's got
does
the
lead,
Chargers this
or
week.
excuse me, the Chargers. My apologies. You are correct. Um, Going up against the Chargers probably leads for a little bit more upside. With the way he's been playing right now. But I don't hate them. Like they're really close in the rankings this week, Terrence. Like they really are. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna tell you Purdy's the wrong option, but I will tell you I'd probably ride the hot hand with Burrow
Right.
and just kind of see where that takes me.
Right. And this is one of those that you're right. Purdy probably is the safer floor, right? Like that's kind of how I see that one. Purdy's probably got the safer floor, but Burrow's got the much higher ceiling. And if you're going up against that kind of matchup there, you probably need the ceiling play more so than the floor play on that, unless you've got other options throughout the lineup that you can try and match or overcome some of those performances there, right? Like, and Terrence, I think we touched on this when we were going on Wednesday there a little bit, right? Like, Purdy is a guy that's probably going to drop back and throw the ball maybe 30 times in this matchup against Seattle. Like, I think that's kind of the ceiling on how many times we see him throw the ball is about 30, maybe 33, right? Kind of in that range there, right? When you're looking at Joe Burrow, there's a good chance that we see him drop back and rocket the ball 40 plus times in this matchup, right? Because if the Bengals are going to win, it's going to come on the right arm of Joe Burrow. It looks like T. Higgins is going to finally be a go again on this. Jamar Chase. So now you've got both weapons on the outside that we can potentially kind of see this thing come through. So I think Joe Burrow is the ceiling play on that one for sure. Any other thoughts on that one?
No, I think you and I are pretty well aligned on that one.
Yeah. All righty, Terrence, Knox, Ferguson, or Pat Freiermuth, tight end.
Hooey. I would tell you that it's Ferguson, not by a whole bunch. I don't like Freiermuth this week against Baltimore, right? Baltimore's pass defense has been bad, but it's been on deep balls. It's been their secondary. The coverage they get out of the linebackers against tight ends is top notch. So I do not like Pat Freiermuth at all. Dawson Knox is interesting because he probably has the easiest matchup against the Chiefs, but what we don't know is how much he's actually going to, if he's going to fill that true pass catching role, or if they're going to run more, if they're just going to run more 11 personnel and keep him in. So I would probably lean Ferguson, figuring that the Cowboys are going to be trailing pretty well throughout that game. He's going to be the easiest throw for Cooper Rush. And try and get some of those cheap points, maybe some garbage time points. The Cowboys are trying to scrape back in this game against Houston. So I think I would lean Ferguson, followed by Knox, then Freiermuth.
Yeah, I don't know that I have any differences on that one there, right? Yeah, I think I'm probably right there with you. This one here is going to come down to who you think is going to end up getting into the end zone, right? Like, that's really where that's going to come to play, because I think without a touchdown, all these guys without a touchdown, you're looking maybe 4 points, maybe 5 points type of thing when it's all said and done. So that being said, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, I could see that end up being a lower scoring affair. Kansas City, Buffalo, it's interesting, right? That matchup can go one of two ways. You're either going to get it where it turns into a shootout, or it's going to turn into a very low scoring affair, right? Like, this is going to be, that matchup there is going to be one that I think is a 17-14 type of matchup, or it's a 35-37, 34-37 type of deal. Like, it's going to be on one of those kind of extremes for me as far as that Buffalo and Kansas City, and both of those teams have been playing pretty well defensively. So I think it may tend to favor a little bit on the lower side of things there. So yeah, at that point, I'm going to lean on the Houston and Dallas matchup and go with Ferguson as well. Terrence asking about kickers: McManus, Casey, kicker, so Butker, Aubrey, or Lutz.
I'm going to go with Lutz in this matchup. And I know he's playing outdoors, but Will Lutz has been very good for the Broncos this year. And the Broncos offense has been moving the ball, but they're still not consistently finding the end zone. Their points per game are up overall, even though they've had a couple back-to-back games. But I think playing teams that aren't named Baltimore and Kansas City helped the Broncos tremendously across the board. So I do think there's going to be some points on the board. They're gonna need to play well offensively to keep the Falcons at reach, right? Between what Bijan's doing, along with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, if there's a sighting there, and Darnell Mooney. The Broncos are going to have their hands full defensively. So that just means the offense is going to have to make sure they're putting points up on the board. And typically when you're at home, you're taking points, right? You're taking points at home. You take the gambles on the road to try and quiet the crowd here a little bit. I know a lot of people say the opposite, like you're on the road, take the points. I think you're better off as the home team doing it. Put the road team at odds. You're playing at altitude. The home crowd should be into this game here. So I'm going Will Lutz in this game just because the KC kicker. Who's kicking for KC right now? Spencer Schrader? I don't know who that is. I can't speak to that. I don't know anything about this Spencer Schrader. I don't know where he went to college. I don't know what it's like. So I'm gonna.
Yeah, he's coming off the Jets practice squad.
Oh, lovely.
He was so good on the Jets and their practice squad, he couldn't crack the lineup with to replace Greg the Leg. So, yeah, at that point, if I've got to look up who the guy is, I'm going to pass on that one.
Yeah, I'm not going to mess with that. I'm going with Lutz here. I like Brandon Aubrey probably the best as a kicker, but I have little to no faith in the Dallas offense. So I guess it's possible that they get in a scoring range 3 times and they just kick 3 field goals.
Right. Yeah. Well, at least with the Aubrey's leg, if they get it to, the 50, the 40 or 45 yard line of Texas, they can, he's at least got a shot to put it through the uprights.
Oh, that's for sure. And it is in the dome. So
right.
If you wanted to lean that route, you could go Brandon Aubrey. Like, I don't see anything massively wrong with that. I understand the logic behind it, but I think for this week, I think I'm going to go Will Lutz. I have a feeling about him.
Let's say, if Denver lines up on the left hash mark, I feel far better about Lutz than if they line up on the right hash. So
it was not his fault that kick got blocked.
I know it's that offensive line that's incredibly weak on that left-hand side. So that line got blown up there. So if they line up on the left hash and then that it's the right side of that line that's more exposed there. I'm better with that than if they're kicking from the right hash. So anyway.
Terrible. They should have beat the Chiefs.
Yes. But no,
we did talk about that on this show, how close that game would be because they do give the Chiefs fits. And man, they about won that thing outright. I was so bummed.
Yes, I was not a happy camper last Sunday morning. So, but all righty, let's go ahead and hit up this one. Shy One is asking Dusky or Taysom. It's Disley or Taysom or Knox.
I'm gonna go Taysom. Yeah. No Chris Olave. You really don't have a true secondary or second option. You're maybe not necessarily chasing points against Cleveland, but I do think their hands are going to be full in a lot of ways against Cleveland, only because with trading Lattimore away to the Commanders, they got to generate some offense somehow that's not named Alvin Kamara. And generally, when they need that, it means Taysom Hill has a game. So I do like Taysom. He probably has the highest upside. If you're just looking for kind of a baseline consistency, I'm going Will Disley.
Fair. I'd honestly would lean on the Taysom Hill for both floor and ceiling on this one. Myself, just you hit the nail on the head for me just a little bit ago with the fact that it's Alvin Kamara and then who else on the offense, right? Like we had the Marquez Valdez-Scantling one performance this year happened this last week, and I don't see that one repeating here. I don't know of anybody else that I really feel confident throwing out there to be like, oh, hey, this guy on this team is going to do something, right? Like Tipton, I don't think we're going to see much there. Again, I don't think that we see Marquez Valdez-Scantling have the that kind of performance again, because it was an outlier it was very much an outlier with the fact that he had about a 12% target share. You know,
Mhm.
you just can't expect three receptions for 30 yards apiece, averaging out type of thing, multiple touchdowns, right? So,
You mean
um,
that's not normal?
no, well, he has one game a year like that, so
Yeah,
at
this is
least
true. This is true.
we've already seen it. Now we can quit chasing the market the MVS side of things. So,
Right.
yeah, and Tipton kind of the same thing, right? Like he's more of a big play guy. I'm not seeing anything else on New Orleans that makes me go, ooh, let's try and chase this one a little bit. So I think it's going to be Alvin Kamara, and then it's going to be Taysom Hill, and outside of that, we'll see Derek Carr, be throwing his receivers into yeah, just throwing it to a bunch of guys out there. So um, yeah, it'll be interesting. But I'm that's not a matchup that I'm looking forward to watching. Like I can't even sit there and go, "Ooh, it'll be a good defensive matchup." I don't know that we'll see that either. Like this one here has the that could be a an interesting one just from the standpoint of you got a couple of guys that can turn the ball over a lot. Um, so
Right.
that could be interesting from that aspect. But yeah, other than that, kind of a hard one for me there. So, and guys, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and throw them out there. Let's go ahead and chat about those here on the Friday night here and help get things ready to go here for week 11. But you did mention some matchups there earlier in the show. Which uh, which matchups are you really kind of looking forward to seeing this week?
Oh man. I think this Niners Seattle matchup, right, for the NFC West obviously has big time divisional implications. So I think that should be a very good game heading towards us. I do like this Denver Atlanta matchup partially because I'm a homer, but Denver's finally getting coming back home against the two best teams in the AFC, arguably. I know the Bills probably have something to say about that, but we're going to call it the two best teams in the AFC right now. So getting back home and being able to get right and try and keep pace for the wild card spots in the AFC. So there's definitely some intrigue there. Pittsburgh, Baltimore is always must see football, right? It's just
Mhm.
such a hard hitting physical game that um, I think that one's always a lot of fun, um, especially if you just like big hits, short tempers, just real physical brand of football. I like that one a lot. So those are probably my top three, honestly, for this week as far as the matchups go. Now, I think that I would really like to see, for fantasy purposes, see the LA Rams just really take care of business against the New England Patriots
Mhm.
and see that offense really click and kind of find itself again after it kind of got stifled a little bit by the Dolphins. Um, and then I also um, let's see here. What else? I think that's probably is the top four. Like Cincinnati Chargers, okay. Like, yeah, the Chargers are fighting for a wild card spot. So is Cincinnati. So that one has playoff implications. For some reason, that doesn't ring a bell. Detroit and Jacksonville doesn't do it for me. Like Jacksonville just has no appeal offensively. So I can't say that that's must see TV by any stretch. Houston, Dallas, same thing with all the injuries that Dallas has right now. Um, on paper, you wanted that to be a really good game coming into this time of year between those two teams in Texas, and now it's kind of leaving you wanting a little bit more. Same thing with the Jets and the Colts. That game doesn't really do it for me either. So there's, like I said, there's some that I'm not so fond of, Excuse me. But there's 3-4 games that I'm definitely looking forward to tuning into and checking out.
Fair enough. One of the ones that's really interesting to me is that Seattle San Francisco game, right? And kind of
Mhm.
where it opened, where it's kind of moved to, but right, like there's a lot of folks out there that are thinking San Francisco is a touchdown favorite in that divisional matchup. I think that one has the potential to get into a little bit of a shootout type of deal here. So one that I'm very interested to see how that one kind of comes to play there. I do like the how you mentioned the Cincinnati Los Angeles one, right? Like Cincinnati has got to really win a lot of games coming down the stretch to keep their playoff hopes alive. Same thing too with Miami, right? Like they're going up against Vegas, and Miami's in that almost gotta win out type of thing to keep playoff hopes alive there. Um, but the one that's really interesting for me, right? Like, and it doesn't it'll be interesting to see from how it turns out on a fantasy perspective is the Jacksonville Detroit side of things, because on paper, right, this is one of those that Detroit should, the guys that are there, right, your Monty's, your Jameer Gibbs, your Amon Ross, Laporta, Goff, like all of these guys, like that should be one of those that you would anticipate having monster fantasy performance out of this one,
Mhm.
and wouldn't surprise me if each one of those guys drastically underperforms the projections on this, because I could very much see that being to a point where Jacksonville turns the ball over a couple of times. Detroit also has some really good special team type of play that they're getting out there as well. So this could be one of those that the highest fantasy performer on Detroit, maybe their defense and special teams. Like, it would not surprise me if we look up and we see something like that. Like, this could be a deal where we ultimately see Detroit, their defense, special teams gets enough turnovers, things like that, to the point where this game is out of control by halftime, and you end up seeing this to a point where you know Jared Goff, they win by 30, but Jared Goff had like 130 yards passing because that's all that was needed. Like like very interesting kind of deal there. So the I saw a post out there earlier today that kind of, I don't know, brought up a thought anyway. It's probably the best way to do it, right? Like, this person's contention, and you gotta love social media, but this person's contention is that Nick Sirianni gets kind of pushed to the back there, that because Dan Campbell being such a far better coach, yada yada yada, and they tried claiming that that a lot of that was because you know Sirianni's done such a great job with this and turning around and all of this and all of that. But I don't know. That was one of those that when I saw that one come up, I was like, well, Detroit was a team that hadn't won a division in forever, hadn't made it into conference, the conference championship game in forever, never made it to a Super Bowl. Whereas Sirianni was literally taking over a team that was, what, 2 years removed from a title. Like, it was 3 years removed. Like, that was not with the nucleus kind of still intact there. So, but anyway, I saw that one come through and just kind of figured I'd bring that up tonight and see if there was any thoughts around something like that.
I don't know, man. I think each is good in their own regard, right? I think Nick Sirianni has I think they've done a good job replacing the key veterans or the high-priced veterans that have left that team with young talent, or bringing in a key free agent like a Saquon to be able to keep the chains moving in Philly, right? Like, they lost Jason Kelsey, they lost uh was it Peters, who their left tackle. and now his name is escaping me. Anyway, to free agency, right? They've had tons of defensive back turnover within that organization, and they just keep hitting in the draft, right? Like there is it's a little bit more than coaching, right? It's identifying talent, your scouting department, everything else. But that, I'd tell you, Sirianni's done a really good job managing the expectations of what the Philly faithful expect out of their team, out of that organization. Um, Now it's a combination between the head coach and the GM, right? Identifying players to bring in, how they fit in, what they can do, and listening to each other and having a really good relationship. And not all organizations have that, and you see dysfunction all over the place. The Eagles are not one of them. They seem to have a very united front between the head coach and the front office, and step into whatever that player is together as a unified front. That's good. I think Dan Campbell's held up to his idea of being a really aggressive, hard-nosed team and taking a team that didn't know how to win and making some right moves along the way, whether it's Jared Goff, whether it's just the drafting of some players, knowing when to move on from DeAndre Swift, and you're bringing in Jahmyr Gibbs instead, getting, allowing um, Williams to leave, and then you're bringing in Montgomery after Williams led the league in touchdowns. Like there's been some moves that Campbell's made that are just as good, but just developing that hard-nosed, aggressive style of team and teaching them how to win and perform and be consistent in a relatively short amount of time, because this is his third year, right, as the head coach there.
I think this might be 4, but
might be number 4.
I'm gonna look it up and see. But
And that's possible. Might be number 4. The COVID year is weird, right? 2020
right.
and 21 kind of blend together, and that is what it is.
Right.
I think regardless of, I think both are very good coaches and completely respectable for what they've done, even though they've had to do it different ways, right? Sirianni stepped into a winning organization. A lot of those veterans carried that on. The Rams, the veterans on that team didn't know how to win. Like
Yeah.
he helped develop them and teach them how to win. So I think because of what they were asked to do, I'd give the nod to Dan Campbell. But sometimes managing the expectations and the weight of what the fan base brings on an organization is just as, if not more difficult than having kind of the lovable loser, and now holy crap, they're good, and now the city just rallies around you because of that.
Right. Yeah. No, I would agree. And this is Campbell's 4th year.
4th year, okay.
So, no, I would agree with that. Right. Like, and some really good points there. One of the other things too that, I think has benefited Dan Campbell is the fact that his coaching core has very much remained intact with him, right? Like, the defensive coordinator getting looks at head coaching jobs. The offensive coordinator has been two cycles now, has been kind of rumored as the the next guy up type of thing. But managing to keep that kind of those top 3 guys between your head coach and your offensive and your defensive coordinator intact, I think has certainly helped them out and provide some stability there, and allows the some of that player development to further along there, where you're not having to change schemes or change change some of those things every offseason. So I think that's one of the things that certainly has helped out there too. Sirianni has done a good job kind of keeping that moving along, even with several coordinator changes, right? Both offensive, defensive coordinator got hired out as head coaches not that long ago. Last season, I know they changed out a bunch of coordinators as well. So it's been a very kind of interesting ride there. But it was one of those that I just saw that it happened to kind of bring up the thought, and like, that's just an interesting take there. So
Absolutely. So here's one for you.
okay.
And we can look at this by position group if we want. I'm looking at looking over wide receivers right now and just taking your thought on it. So, players who have yet to play in week 11. Okay.
Okay.
Here are kind of the consensus top 10 of wide receivers. And I want you to pick a guy who is most likely to not finish inside the top 10. And then we're going to go for kind of a wide receiver 2 type level who's most likely to finish inside the top 10.
All right. Yeah, let's roll with it.
All right. So we have Jamar, Jefferson, St. Brown, Nico, Puka, George Pickens, Cooper Kupp, Debo, Tyreek, and Garrett Wilson. So out of those 10 players, which one do you feel like is most likely to finish outside of the top 10 as they are currently ranked?
Tyreek would be my first choice there, right? And there's a lot of it has to do with just kind of what we've seen so far, right? Like we have not seen the Tyreek games. Outside of week 1, his best finish has been wide receiver like 22. Like it's been bad. And anybody that's had the Tyreek experience knows how just not very much fun it's been. So Tyreek would be my guy that I feel is kind of the obvious choice on that one, and that's where I'm going to go with that. But kind of my next one that I would roll with is Debo in that one there as well, right? Like I just don't see Debo getting that one done. I think that we'll see him finish outside the top 10.
Okay. So, definitely different than the 2 I was thinking.
Well, let's set it up.
Now,
what were you thinking?
And I don't disagree with the Tyreek take. So let me start there. Like I do not disagree with the Tyreek take at all. The 2 that came to mind for me, the first one was George Pickens.
That was kind of my third guy.
Just because of the physical nature of this game, and I think Baltimore, their front line is going to be able to give Russ a little bit of problems, and I think it's going to be hard for him to have the time to get deep on that defense. So I think the top 10 might be a bit of a stretch here for Pickens. The other one's Puka Nacua.
Okay.
And a lot of that is because going up against Gonzalez for the Patriots, Gonzalez is I'm not going to say the bright spot, but he is by far the brightest spot of that Patriots defense. And he is quickly approaching shutdown corner territory, kind of quietly, right? Because the Pats haven't been good and no one's paying as much attention to him as they're in kind of this retooling, rebuilding, resetting phase, however you want to phrase it. But I do think Puka is going to have a harder time because he plays outside so much. He does go inside from time to time, but typically if him and Kupp are on the field at the same time, if one of them is going to be in the slot, it is going to be Cooper Kupp more often than it is Puka Nacua. So I think he could potentially see some difficulty just due to the tougher matchup and come in outside of the top 10.
Yep, I could see that, right? And it's a good call there. As much as I want to disagree with it, I don't know that I can, right? Like it's one of those that my fantasy teams hope that not to be the case, and we see Puka have a very good finish there. But no, I think that's a pretty solid analysis there. And George Pickens was kind of the third guy that I had on that list for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you were talking about the kind of the next set there.
Yeah, kind of the next set there. So then we have Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf, Drake London, CeeDee Lamb, Zay Flowers, Jaden Reed, Cortland Sutton, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Cedric Tillman, Juwan Jennings. Excuse me. I think that rounds out the next 10.
Fair enough. I'm going to ride with Cortland Sutton. as the guy that can get there, right? Like we've seen back-to-back weeks with top 10 performances out of Cortland Sutton. I'm gonna ride the hot hand on that one and kind of go with that one.
No,
I don't
fair enough.
I don't know that I have another one that really stands out. DeAndre, if he's the touchdown guy in Kansas City that week, he could sneak up there. But there's not another one that really kind of jumps off the page for me. What about you?
Calvin Ridley.
Okay, I can see that.
Is a guy that's kind of jumping off the page for me. Minnesota's given a lot of different fronts, so I do think that it's going to give Will Levis some issues here. But Ridley's been able to get loose here the last couple weeks. We saw him with a couple touchdowns last week. We saw him with a high yardage performance the week before that. So it seems like Ridley and Levis have been clicking as of late, much to the same tune as Sutton and Nix have, right? But I think with kind of where that matchup is and expecting Tennessee to be trailing in that game and again forcing their hand a little bit, I could see Ridley getting loose and maybe grabbing a touchdown late here in garbage time, if you will, to be able to kind of help propel him up. So I think that's a little bit more the dark horse. I think another interesting option, Cedric Tillman. I'm really not sure who else Cleveland's going to be throwing the ball to besides Tillman and Njoku.
Yeah.
So I think he has the possibility to sneak up inside the top 10 there. So that one's interesting for me as well. But those are two of the guys that I do like here in this next set to potentially have top 10 weeks for fantasy rosters.
Fair enough. Yeah, I could see that. The Ridley has certainly found some juice the last couple of weeks here. That's for sure. I still liken that. I still credit that to me dropping him in the home league.
Right. And I think you said that too. You dropped him, so it meant, Ridley's going to start going off.
Mm-hmm. And it never fails. Never fails, right? Like every year that I've had Ridley and I've either traded him or dropped him, things like that. We've seen him absolutely just blow up on the tail end. So, but it is what it is, right? We'll just move on that one. Maybe I'll draft him just to leave him on the bench so that I don't have to then play against it. So,
right.
Alrighty. We do have another question coming in over here on YouTube. Terrence asking, hearing Mooney and Cousins are banged up. Richardson starting for Indy, Jets or Broncos? So both Mooney and Cousins are off the injury report, but both did miss time this week in practice, or were limited in some fashion.
And I like Darnell Mooney.
Yes,
because he's going to be getting a lot of moss. Sutton will be on Drake London quite a bit. So I think that means Darnell Mooney has the real opportunity to get loose. That is a weak spot of the Broncos defense here, is kind of that second or nickel corner situation. It's something that I expect them to address whether it's free agency or the draft this coming off season to really solidify this defense, because they've been giving teams some hell. They really have. So I think that's just kind of one spot that they need to find a way to improve, get better. We knew that was a weak spot coming into the season, and really they've covered it up for the most part fairly well, other than, really the Baltimore game where they just got away from them. Now, Mooney doesn't have Zay Flowers type speed, but Mooney has speed. So I think you could see some similar type issues that Mooney gives the Broncos defense that Zay Flowers did. It's just a matter of, where he's at in the progression. I think Kirk Cousins is smart enough veteran quarterback to be able to find him and locate him if the offensive line's given him time. So I think Mooney could have a decent week. Now, as far as Richardson starting for Indy, if you're talking just for defense, Terrence, I'm starting the Jets this week. Like, it's too juicy not to start the Jets against Anthony Richardson and just bank on the fact that he's going to have some turnovers or he's not going to finish the game, and then Joe's going to come in. Neither Indy quarterback's been playing overly well this year. Yes, Michael Pittman's expected to play this game. So, we'll see how that goes. Yes, it gives Josh Downs and Alec Pierce a bit of a downgrade, but we have seen both of them pop each once with Richardson being quarterback. So don't always lost there for those fantasy assets. But given the state of things, I would tell you I would rather gamble on the Jets against Richardson than I would the Broncos against Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, and Mooney's a guy that I think, right, like what was reported was an Achilles type of deal. But again, right, he's off the injury report, expected to play full send type of thing there. So I think you're right. I think Mooney's going to have a pretty good game against the Broncos. And yeah, I do see him outperforming where he's you kind of consensus ranked for this week. So I could easily see him sneak it up inside wide receiver 2 territory. So Binkin over on YouTube saying that they weren't a fan of the Tyson and Paul fight tonight. So
it's over already. I feel like it just started.
Fair enough. So I have to see what that result was here when we're done, but just to see. But yeah. Well, any other kind of thoughts we want to explore tonight?
I mean, I think everybody kind of has a good idea of what the top 10 running backs look like, right? So I don't know that necessarily does anything. I think we know who those guys are, but I think there's some interesting matchups here in that next set of 10. And I think there's some landmines that we need to avoid, and then some possible successes we could have if we want to kind of look at that here real quick.
All right. Yeah, let's do it.
So, one of the guys that I'm really thinking we need to avoid this week is Chase Brown against that Chargers defense. I think, again, it's going to be one on Joe Burrow's right arm. I don't know that the Bengals are going to be able to do that on the ground. What helps Chase is the fact that he does receive out of the backfield. So he'll get probably 3 grabs, maybe 4 against this Chargers defense. So if he's able to bust one here a little bit, I think that's plausible, but I don't want to necessarily bank on that. One that I really like in this week is Josh Jacobs going up against Chicago. That secondary has been really good in pass defense, but their defensive line, their front 7, has not done a great job of stopping the run. So I think Josh Jacobs could have a really good week against Chicago and try and get things sucked up and push forward. And I think another one kind of in that range, I think this might be the Nick Chubb breakout game.
Yeah.
Like, I'm hoping this is the Nick Chubb breakout game. And really, if it doesn't come against this banged up, depleted New Orleans defense, I'm not sure if we're going to see it this season. As he's coming back from the knee surgery and everything else. It's a great story. I'm definitely playing him in a couple different leagues that I'm just so thin at running back right now. I just don't have other options. So I'm playing Chubb this week and hoping for best. But I do think that this has the potential of being a very good week for Nick Chubb owners as he can find his way into the end zone for the second time this season and really carry the load for Cleveland, if you will, against like I said, depleted New Orleans defense.
Fair enough. There's an interesting matchup this week with the, as far as that kind of, who could have a blow up game, who could have the landmine type of game. And I think there's 2 running backs in the same game that very well could kind of fit that bill. And that's the Buffalo Kansas City matchup here, right? The James Cook going up against KC. KC's been one of the toughest run defenses, giving up some of the fewest points to opposing fantasy running backs out there this season. So that could be a potential hazard there. Kareem Hunt, though, going up against Buffalo. Buffalo's been pretty forgiving on the ground and has certainly been a favorable matchup in most cases out there when running backs are facing them. You're currently giving up the second most points to opposing fantasy running backs. So you've got one of the best run defenses, one of the worst run defenses, and happens to be in the same game, same matchup. So I think that one will be a very interesting one to see how that one kind of comes to play.
Mm-hmm. No, I absolutely agree with that.
Any other thoughts on this one?
I mean, I still, kind of the consensus rankings for David Montgomery are always interesting. Why they have him at 16. I think he's always a threat to be top 12 to 10 these days. So I do think he's undervalued, at least the rankings go. But if you have him on your roster, you're playing him at this point, right? Like you're not really finding better options, whether it's a two running back set with the flex or whatever. Like you're finding ways to get Montgomery in there. So he's probably the other guy. Yeah. And outside of that, I think you take what you get. Aaron Jones might have a difficult matchup. James Cook has a difficult matchup this week. One that maybe we're not talking about, Alexander Mattison against the Dolphins. It's kind of a deep dive for a flex play, depending on what your bye weeks or running back situation looks like. That one might be able to get you some juice. I don't know if it's super high upside, but he's really the only show in town. So as long as they don't turn around and give the ball to Zeus on the 1 yard line like they did last week and vulture the touchdown away from Madison, I think you'll be okay.
Yeah, very well could be. Very well could be. One of the ones that a couple of running backs here that I'm very interested to see what this looks like, going forward. And I think this week will shed a little bit more light on that is the Denver running back situation, right? Like Javonte Williams, 1 carry last week. Audric Estime really starting to kind of see that come out there. And it'll be interesting to see how that one kind of plays out there. Do we see more of a Estime eating into more of that snap share and the ultimately getting more carries there? So that's one of those that I'm kind of keeping an eye on what that one looks like here coming down the stretch.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. A couple of questions coming in here. Let's go ahead and hit up this one. Mr. Wumbo saying I have to start Spears, Warren, and Pittman in one league at the beginning of the end. Yeah, I could see where you're feeling a little blue about that one.
I guess for what it's worth, I'm starting Warren.
I think he says he has to start all of them because of the bye weeks and injuries.
Start Spears, Warren, and Pittman. Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, you might be in for a bad time there, Mr. Wumbo, this week. So, Binkin over on YouTube asking Hunt or Ridley in the flex. Ooh, this is a good one.
This is a good one.
Both of them have very plus matchups. Both of them, we both think that they can have some pretty big blow up games here. But what are you thinking? Where are you leaning on this one?
Man, my gut tells me Hunt is where my gut is leaning on this one. The way that the Chiefs have been using him, really, as a red zone threat, they've used him a little bit out of the backfield, not a whole lot, but a little bit out of the backfield. I expect this game to be pretty low scoring, as most of these matchups have been. There's been one or two that kind of get up there in points, but I think right now with the way both teams are built, neither one is necessarily looking to blow you out of the building. They're looking for some offensive consistency, being able to move the chains. And if you're moving the chains, the best way to do that is with a solid ground game. And the Chiefs are lights out against running backs this year. So it's not James Cook, and I know we're not talking about him, but if it's not him, then I think Hunt is able to be that guy, because I don't know that the Chiefs defense wants to see Josh Allen on the field a whole heck of a lot. And the best way to do that is to continue to keep the clock moving. You run the ball. You have Mahomes make the plays that he needs to, right? Help convert on third down a little bit. And yeah, he'll have some spectacular plays, but I think Kareem Hunt gets into the end zone at least once, maybe, 75 yards, call it, get in the end zone once. Ridley is more of the upside play for that big play. Hunt is probably going to be your safer floor. With how I see these matchups going out. So I'm going to go Hunt by a little bit, maybe not a wide margin, but definitely Hunt by a little bit over Ridley.
Yeah, I kind of see that one as a ceiling floor type of play, right? Like I think Kareem Hunt has the higher floor, Calvin Ridley has the higher ceiling in this one, and that's kind of where I would lean at that one. So, thinking it really kind of depends for me as far as projections and your matchup, and if you're looking for more of the floor play, something to get kind of the safer points and you weather the storm that way, or if you need a little bit more of a moonshot, maybe maybe you're playing up against the somebody that had Hurts, somebody that had Saquon last night that could be looking for some upside there. So that's kind of how I would play that one. So any other thoughts on that one?
No, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah. Silky over on YouTube asking, should I start Ingram, Pitts, or Hill?
The way I think I'd go with that is Ingram, then Hill, then Pitts. Again, negative game script for the Jags is kind of what everybody's thinking in this game. So they're going to have to continue to throw to be in it. The Detroit defense has been really good against the secondary. They've given up a little bit to the tight end, right? They're not the league's worst against tight end, if you will, but they definitely will give it up a little bit. Hill's probably your ceiling play just because he does a little bit of everything. And Pitts is just there. Like, I don't know that I could start Pitts in good conscience over these two options this week.
Yeah, it's kind of where I would lean there as well. And I'm probably kind of right there with you. I think that's probably the order that I would have that in there as well. So I like it. Mr. Wumbo saying, I know they had to swap to Chubb to appease whatever fans they have left, but Ford was having 5.5 yards per carry and Chubb having 2.5 yards makes them upset more than just parading Chubb around as a thank you. Ford's been injured too, right? Like Ford missed some games with a hamstring injury. Really returned this last week after missing a couple of games going into the bye. So I don't know that we necessarily saw the full swap happen there. And a lot of times when you have running backs coming back off of hamstring injuries, if you have okay, so yeah, right there saying, yeah, it got hurt that Chubb came back. So, I mean, there is some of that going on there as well, right? Like, if he's injured, like it's not necessarily that you saw the full swap there. This is one of those that I think the plan will ultimately be to utilize both of these guys going forward a little bit. Jerome Ford, a little bit better pass catcher on that one. So wouldn't be surprised to see him get a lot of the pass catching work and Nick Chubb maybe take first, second down type of deal there. But again, this is one of those that neither one of these guys is necessarily running away with the job. And this last game when we saw them come back, there was about a 40. Yeah, I don't think either one of those guys even reached a 50% snap share last in week 9 when we last saw them. So, any other thoughts on the Chubb and Ford side of things?
No, I'd agree with that. Part of the NFL is right. You're following the money, right? They're paying Chubb. Chubb's healthy. You're going to give him every crack to try and get back to the expectation that we have of Nick Chubb, right? And what he's done over the length of his career, not only healthy, but coming back from injury, it does buy him a little bit of grace. And the things we don't know, honestly, is what's being driven by the head coach and what's being driven by the front office.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's crazy the input that some front offices insist on having to the head coach, and sometimes you just have to acquiesce to the request.
Right. the guy that has the hiring firing decision gets the final say in a lot of these cases. So, alrighty. Over on Twitch, Nick is asking. I know I'm gonna be ripped for this one. Drake London or Cedric Tillman? I don't know that's that difficult of a question there, right? Like it's a bad question. Like it's certainly one of those that Drake London has a very tough matchup. We'll likely see one of the best cornerbacks in the league on him. Cedric Tillman, easier matchup here. But what are your thoughts here?
It's really hard to go away from Drake London and what he's done. Now, I don't think Pat Surtain is going to follow him all over the field. I think Surtain will spend some time on Mooney and some time on London. So there's going to be opportunities for Drake London to get. So I'm not gonna come right out and say that it's hands down Cedric Tillman. I think with what London's done this year with Kirk Cousins, he's earned the right to get the benefit of the doubt that they're going to put him in the right position to be able to make plays for this offense because they need him to. Like they cannot win this game against the Broncos with just Bijan. Like the Broncos defense is better than that. So you're gonna have to throw the ball a little bit. You're gonna try and pick on Moss. But teams, not that they actively throw against Sutton, they definitely take their shots, right? They take their shots against Sutton. Some get burned, some have success, right? But I think the way that this offense is formulated, you're gonna play London. You just got to trust the system and the quarterback in this one. Like Cedric Tillman might outscore Drake London, but if he does, I do not think it's going to be by, I don't think it's going to be by 7 points, right? In full or half point PPR scoring. Like he might get 3 more, right? Like you could see that maybe an extra 2 catches and 10 yards or 1 catch and 20 yards or something like that. You could see that happening. But I think you could just as easily see Drake London find a way to, get loose, whether it's motion, pre-snap motion. They catch the Broncos in zone coverage, and they're able to find Drake London on those. We've seen him play in the slot a little bit more this year than we did last season. So there's another way to kind of get him some softer coverage. And Kirk Cousins typically, not every game, but typically gets London involved fairly early, right? Short plays, screen plays, some different things to kind of get him rolling. So again, I agree with Derek. You're not going to get ripped for this question, right? We're trying to win games, and there's nothing wrong with that. Tillman has the easier matchup. Tillman also has the higher ceiling just because of who those corners are consistently, because he is going to see more of Surtain.
All right.
I'd tell you Drake London has the higher touchdown upside. So there's 6 points in your pocket, potentially. So that does account for something. And with the touchdown upside and knowing that Kirk Cousins will force the ball into Drake London, just like he did, to a sense, Justin Jefferson, when he spent all that time in Minnesota, I think you can trust that a little bit and run with it for this week. So I'm going to tell you Drake London by a hair, but it's not going to surprise me if Tillman outscores him by a very small amount.
Right. Yeah, that's I don't know that I have anything to add to that one. That's pretty spot on to kind of how I was thinking as well. So I like it. Mr. Onebo saying that Jerry Jones sends his regards back to the front office side of things there.
Right.
And then Silky saying, what should I move on from? Starters are Purdy, Kamara, Bijan, DK, Pickens, Kraft, Kareem Hunt, Fairbairn, and the Niners defense benches DJ Moore, Burrow, Kincaid, Tyrone Tracy, Jennings, Chubb, Tillman, and Olave.
I mean, I think you can try and package a couple of these guys better to improve your receiver position. Whether obviously Kincaid's out, so that is what it is. But honestly, Kincaid's been a disappointment this year. Like
Yep.
I really thought Kincaid would be more involved in this Buffalo offense, and I snatched him up in a couple redraft leagues, and I've been thoroughly disappointed with how the Bills are using him and finding ways for him to get open. So I think if you can play off that name value and move a DJ Moore and a Dalton Kincaid to try and get a Brock Bowers, I would do that, right? Again, you're playing for the home stretch to get into the playoffs and win playoff games. I think Brock Bowers is a guy that you can absolutely look at if you're wanting to improve your tight end position and maybe not have quite the up and downs with Kraft. Think from a wide receiver perspective, I think you could try and do some sort of similar package, right? If you do DK and Kincaid, can you get an Amon-Ra St. Brown? Right? Can you do something like that to try and improve your number one wide receiver spot? I don't mind Pickens. He has the upside. It's going to have to do St. Brown with the DJ Moore and Kincaid. I think you need a bit more of a name presence, so DK offers that. But I think that would be the move. It's just trying to figure out what you can package together to try and really solidify your wide receiver one position. And then other than that, I think you're okay. Like I like your wide receivers. I like the ability to the pivot between Purdy and Burrow. And your running backs having Casey there to kind of help fill in, obviously Chubb as well. So you got a lot of receivers on your team. I'd just try and pair them up and find a true set it and forget it number one, because that's one thing that you don't have on this team currently.
Yeah, I would agree. The other thing too, that you could try and do is you could try and Kareem Hunt's still got a little bit of runway left on this one. Pacheco likely coming back here in the next few weeks. You could potentially try and package a Kareem Hunt and a DJ Moore and see what you can do on either trying to improve it at running back or like Kevin said, trying to go out there and get make an improvement at the wide receiver position there as well, right? See what you could do. Yeah, even if it's maybe a little bit lower tier than Amon-Ra, but looking at like a Cooper Kupp, maybe even like
Malik
Garrett
Neighbors.
Wilson. Yep.
Garrett Wilson. I think you could look at Drake London, right? Like, yes, it's a tough matchup against the Broncos, but I think you could look at a Drake London. Like, yeah, Derek has a good point, but it doesn't have to necessarily be St. Brown. But yeah, Drake London, pick your Rams wide receiver, whichever one that you would rather have on your roster. Malik Neighbors is there.
I'd even take a run at Nico. See what
you can take a run at Nico and see if the teams are frustrated, right? See if you catch them sleeping a little bit. I mean, again, I was able to do it this week. At the very beginning of the week, caught a league mate kind of sleeping on Nico, needed some quarterback help and made the move. So there's possibilities out there, but that'd really be the only one thing. Other than that, don't get tied to a defense and
or kicker, right? Like just
or kicker. Yeah, don't get tied to them. But other than that, I think you are pretty well set.
I like it. All right, Jason over on YouTube. Will you trade Pittman, Wandale Robinson, Jake Fergie, and one of Madison or Estime for Rico Dwaddle, Cade Otton, and Brian Thomas Jr.? It's a 4 for 3. I only use Pittman and
Ferguson.
Jake Ferguson. Okay.
So no. For a couple different reasons. Mac Jones is likely the starting quarterback the rest of the season for the Jaguars. So Brian Thomas Jr. for me is out. I don't trust Mac Jones. Cade Otton after their bye week, I think takes a bit of a back seat as Mike Evans comes back. So there's another one. Rico, no thanks. I don't want any part of that. I think you're better off with Estime or Madison, just kind of playing the matchup. So I don't know. I don't know that this improves your situation, Jason. I think it just gives you a completely different set of headaches than what you're already facing with the Pittman injury, the Robinson inconsistency because the quarterback play. Yes, Fergie is dealing with the backup quarterback, but I do think him and Cooper Rush will find some chemistry there. And again, once Evans comes back, I think him and Kate Otten are basically the exact same guy in that situation. So I wouldn't do this. I understand why you want to move off of Pittman and Robinson. Like, I get why you want to move off of them. I just don't think it fixes anything for you. It's just a different headache.
Yeah. I mean, even if Dallas is really, truly honest about Rico Dowdle being the sole back in Dallas and being the feature back at that point, this is not the offense that we thought coming into the season, going forward. So, yeah, this is one of those that, even with him being the feature back, you're looking back end running back 2 at best. Pittman, Wandale for Brian Thomas Jr. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing, right? If you're getting Mac Jones, we've seen the Mac Jones experiment in the past, and I don't think anybody was eager to sign up for more of that.
I think Ingram's kind of the only person who benefits from that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Because I think Brian Thomas Jr. rest of the season, you're probably looking wide receiver 3 at best. Pittman with Anthony Richardson, I think you're looking more wide receiver 3. Yeah, you've got a whole bunch of depth pieces that you're just kind of moving around here, and I don't know that it's going to help you having to sort that out. You're just going to get probably frustrated on which guy should have started and didn't. So, yeah, I'm with Kevin. I wouldn't do that one either. Jason, thoughts on my team? Jaden Daniels, Mixon, Barkley, Achane, Tracy, Chubb. Wide receivers are CD, Adams, Marvin Harrison Jr., DJ Moore, Cooper, and tight end Kittle.
Package CD and DJ Moore together and get you a better wide receiver option. See if you can get it done on name power.
Yeah.
Whether it's Chase, Jefferson, see if you can do CD for Nico straight up. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Get out of the CD Lamb business for this season. Jaden Daniels is another guy. I think his ribs are worse than what anybody's leading on. He's not getting anything behind his throws. He's short throwing a lot of things. He doesn't really seem to have any torque. He doesn't really want to move. Just some things that we saw driving success for him earlier on this season. We're struggling to find here at the moment. So I like the team. I really like your running back room, right? Mixon, Barkley, and Achane. What a great 3-headed monster to run out 3 running backs every single week.
Right.
So at this point, it's just trying to improve your wide receiver room. So I would absolutely put CeeDee Lamb on the block, Devontae Adams, even Marvin Harrison, any one of those guys, any 2 of those guys. I would try and pair up and do a 2-for-1 to see if you can improve for a true top 5 wide receiver.
Right. And I'm assuming that this is redraft, Jason.
Yes. Sorry. That's my assumption as well.
Yeah. If it's dynasty, that certainly changes some of that. So we'll just kind of throw that disclaimer there, but, redraft purposes as well. Right. I'm with Kevin where I do think that there is, that's Jaden Daniels looked very different the last couple of games than what we saw the first couple of games of the season. Even when you saw like last night, right? Like wasn't looking to take off and run. He wasn't looking to get, use those legs and pick up some of the easy yards type of things that way that we saw much earlier in the season. So I do think that there's some of that. So I wouldn't mind even trying to package, Jaden Daniels, see what you can do on trying to package Jaden Daniels and CD and try and come out of that with with a quarterback in there as well, right? Like, wouldn't mind a Kyler Murray, right? Like doing a little bit of a trade down there and seeing what you can get for that. Wouldn't mind even a Brock Purdy, something like that either, right? Like there's some things there that you could do there to try and package and make a move on that. And I think you'll end up being stronger down the stretch on that one as well. Any other thoughts on this one?
Nope. You and I are in perfect alignment there.
All righty. Mr. Wombo saying, yeah, skim teams and flip through their bye weeks. I was able to get at least 3 trades done due to bye weeks coming up and the trade deadline. Some teams can't afford a buy and will take a hit. Yeah, that's very true, right? Like if you're going into it and you've got to win out to make the playoffs, there is something to that. One team I traded with had Adams, Breece Hall, James Cook, Evan Ingram, Chase Brown, Kirk Cousins, Olave, Coleman. It's basically a full team on bye for week 12.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. That was part of the reason I've been looking for a second running back, because I didn't want to have Breece Hall and whichever Jags running back was starting that week all on a bye that week. So, being able to get in front of it and use that information, right? Information's power, and sometimes people don't pay enough attention to it. So, Jason, if you're able to kind of capitalize on some of that with owners who are not as diligent or as resourceful, then more power to you. I mean, this is just playing with the information at hand,
right? And then top 5 asking Najee or Ladd at flex half-point PPR.
I'm going to go Ladd McConkey this week. Him and Justin Herbert have been finding each other pretty well here. I think that they're going to need points to stay on top of the Bengals in what could be a little bit of a back and forth affair, depending on how Joe Burrow and his right arm fare this week. So I like that idea, and I think Ladd is a really good candidate to try and get you 12 plus fantasy points.
Yeah, I don't mind that call. This is one of those that I do think that Najee has probably a little bit safer floor to it than Ladd does. Ladd has certainly has a much higher ceiling this week and being a half-point PPR, all of that. But even at that point, like I don't see the floor being that much safer with Najee, to the point where it's like, the range of outcomes is greater for Ladd there. But I'd probably still lean on the Ladd McConkey side of that one. So yeah, I wouldn't mind that. All right. Jason saying I traded Pollard for CD. That's how I got CD, and I traded Darnold and Garrett Wilson for Jaden Daniels, Adams, and Harrison.
Well, that's all right. So you just flip some more.
Right.
Right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the trades, right? Especially probably when you made them. So now that we know what we know, we take that information and we pivot off of that. Like, let's see how we can improve with our current circumstances. So you're able to get one done. Go ahead and see if you can flip a couple of those guys.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd see what you could do, right? Like you could probably get some pretty good star power if you tried to package CD and Jaden Daniels, right? Like see what you could do there, right? Maybe in some people's mind you might be moving down in quarterback, but if this rib thing really is gonna linger on this one, you're not gonna get the Jaden Daniels got weeks 1 through 6.
No, I mean, and feel free to take a look at Kyler, Jordan Love, Goff, Mahomes, right? A lot of people are down on Mahomes,
right?
But
Brock
it's
Purdy
consistent points. Yeah, Brock Purdy. A lot of people don't appreciate Brock Purdy the way that they need to. So I think there's options out there to assist,
right?
And even if you feel like you're taking a slight step back at quarterback, maybe you're able to make that up at the skill position player.
Right. Like at that point, right, maybe you could make that move and you go, Jaden Daniels for Kyler and CD, and you move up into the Nico Collins, Amon-Ra, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase type of realm. Like
Mhm.
there's enough name power in that you could make a move like that. So it all just depends on your league. So Joe over on YouTube, hello from Third Shift, saying Tyson's still the man. Do you like Darnold or Stafford this week?
Stafford for me.
Let's see here. I think I'm inclined to agree. They're both really close for me. But yeah, I'm going to take the Stafford side of it. And it's by a hair for me.
I'm a little more confident than a hair, if that helps.
Fair enough. I think both of these guys are kind of mid QB2 this week is where I kind of see them playing out there. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at there. Any other thoughts on that one?
No, sir.
All righty. Well, guys, that's going to take us down here to the end of the questions. If you got any kind of final thoughts, let's go ahead and throw them out there and get those chatted about. But while we're waiting to see if somebody brings one at the buzzer, any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
Good luck for week 11. Good luck at your trade deadlines. If this is that week for you, we got 4 weeks left. So we're grinding hard, getting ready for that playoff push. So if you're not quite in that playoff picture yet, don't give up yet. There's still a little bit of time if you're in contention. And then if you are set to be in the playoffs, now you're jockeying for position, right? You're doing whatever you can to put yourself in the best shape for weeks 15, 16, 17 standard fantasy playoffs that you possibly can. So keep grinding, guys. We've gotten 2/3 of the way, 3/4 of the way through the regular season, if you will. We're on the home stretch there, and then off to the playoffs. So we're getting close to the promised land.
Absolutely. And I do appreciate everybody tuning in, chiming in, all the questions, comments. Always a lot of fun getting to interact with everybody here on the Friday night fantasy football lights, fantasy football huddle, the bet set snap, all the good stuff there. But I do think that's going to do it for us. Mr. Wumbo, getting the last one in here. Even if you're 0-10 and feeling miserable, keep working the waiver wire and try to knock people out of the playoffs to make them miserable too.
Heck yeah. Yeah. Don't give up on it. Right. Don't give up on it and roll over for people. Make sure you're setting your lineup. I'm not, if you don't want to put the effort into the waiver wire, I'm not going to condemn you and say that's the worst thing ever, but make sure you're setting a good lineup. Be competitive, right? Make sure that you're competitive and you're making each team earn their victory against you. And if you're able to sneak one or two out down the stretch and you can help shake up the playoff picture, then congratulations, you got to screw your neighbor. And sometimes that's the best you can hope for.
Right. Sometimes that is a lot of fun, especially in some of those leagues that are hyper competitive and guys that you've been in the same league with forever. So always a lot of fun. But that's going to do it for us tonight. He's Kevin. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.